heard someone in a live stream today when the topic of veganism came up. And someone was asked, do they think that they could go vegan? They said, I don't think I could go vegan. And then they said, I think that what vegans do is noble. And she admired them for what they do. But she couldn't go vegan. And then she said, if someone could talk me into it, explain reasons why I should go vegan or help me go vegan, then she might think about it. And it's interesting. There's two things I think about that. Firstly, that particular person has got a lot of followers, so I don't think I'd be able to reach them because there's just too many people, 1 million or so people following them. So I made comments in the live stream section. And then there were other people. There was one person in the live stream said, I don't think there should be this all or nothing type attitude about veganism, meaning that they thought that, baby steps, that's something that people often say, baby steps, and I hold animal groups accountable for that particular position about baby steps. Baby steps are for babies, really. They are. When we know something is wrong, when we know that, for example, racism is wrong, we don't say to somebody, baby steps, just take it easy. It's okay if you make a racist remark or punch somebody who's from a minority group and continue on that way, and eventually, maybe 10 or so years, 20 years down the track, you may completely eradicate that from your life. Racism. We don't say that to people, really. Well, I hope we don't anyway. And yet, there's a widespread sort of a response when someone brings up veganism, basically, which is the rejection of animal use. For some reason, some people like to make excuses like that, and they'll say, that it's elitist to be vegan. I can easily dismiss that one. They say that it's sort of a purist position. These are, by the way, things that are coming from some welfare groups, animal welfare groups that call themselves animal rights groups. People say, baby steps, just take as long as you wish. There's people that will say, I just want them to be treated humanely. All these things can be easily dismissed. They say it's a personal choice, being vegan. Another one that can be dismissed. And then there are people who think that veganism is a health kick, or they think that veganism is all about the environment, that it's only about us once again, about whether we can survive the way we are conducting ourselves on this planet and just continue on with that. Then there are people who say we need to support small animal agriculture. All these things can be dismissed very easily. There are so many excuses, so many, for something so simple, really. It's not hard to grasp. Even when we're young, when our parents say, don't hurt that little dog, or don't pull on that cat's tail, don't kill. We understand that as children. Most parents say that to children. And they read little nursery rhymes that also talk about how sweet animals are, projecting our human traits onto them. But nonetheless, we see them as, in these stories, children's stories. Children think they're lovely. There are so many excuses that we make to not just go ahead and do the right thing. And that's not surprising, because we have been raised in a very speciesist society where we're taught that animals are here for our use, for our entertainment, including cats and dogs, even though we consider them family members. We're taught that they're here for us. And it's something that's so ingrained in us that even after people become vegan, it takes quite a while to rid ourselves of those attitudes. It's something that you have to work on, just like somebody I knew who was a anti-war, anti-imperialist, who's a black man, and he said, I have to work on sexism every day in my life, because he's brought up in a patriarchal society and sexism is still widespread and it's still ingrained in both men and women, which causes violence just like speciesism causes violence. So speciesism in our society is just like that. It's something that is ingrained in us. It's even more pervasive, really, than any other discrimination. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because animals they're not a minority group, but they're the most invisible group on the planet. And our persecution and oppression of these animals is so widespread, so pervasive. And we don't even realize it because it's so normalized. But then sexism is normalized too, and racism, and heterosexism, ableism, classism. So normalized. Just like speciesism, racism is normalized in society where we white people as a whole don't even see it, because we're so used to being the dominant group, even though we're actually not the majority on the planet. We're not the majority of people on the planet. White people tend to call the shots on the planet because of a history of white supremacy and oppression. Humans on the planet, because of our ability to have developed technology and we've become a pervasive species, and we have populated the planet to an extreme degree, and people can argue about that, but it's not sustainable, and it's also not fair to other species on the planet. So we've actually become the dominant species, even though non-human animals outnumber us 99% or more to our 1% or less. They outnumber us, and yet we are calling the shots and breeding them into existence to be used as resources. Or if we're not doing that, we're pushing them further and further out of their living areas, their habitats, so we can build more and more dwellings for ourselves. There are lots of similarities between different forms of discrimination, because it's all about oppressing the vulnerable. It's all about putting our own needs above others. It's all about might makes right. It's all about feeling superior to other groups. And it's always about making those vulnerable groups targets of violence. There's always violence involved in those forms of discrimination. And some people can recognize all those other forms of discrimination, racism, sexism, heterosexism, and so forth. But when you bring up veganism, because there's so much distortion of that particular issue, it's an ethical position, because there's so much that's out there, including misinformation from animal groups and the corporate media and people who don't want to think about it, and businesses who don't want to embrace veganism. So much misinformation and disinformation is put out there about veganism. Is it any wonder when the word comes up that either people are willfully misrepresenting it or using misrepresentation to cover for themselves, just not wanting to embrace it because they think, I can't be bothered, or they like their burger too much, or their cheese, or whatever, even though if you need to have alternatives to that, they exist. But a plant-based diet is delicious, and it's better for us, and it's not destroying the planet, and it's not destroying the lives of 1 to 3 trillion animals every year, sea animals, aquatic animals, and land animals. It's not contributing to zoonotic diseases. It's not destroying the oceans. But there's so many people who, like on this live stream, they just don't want to have to think about it or acknowledge that it's something that we really need to do. For all the reasons that I talk about often on Faint Signals from Vega, it's something that we really, really need to do. And all those things that I mention, all the different excuses and the different misrepresentations and disinformation, can easily be dismissed and challenged, all of them. But when people are committed to willful ignorance, it doesn't matter whether you challenge all of those and dismiss them. They're committed to continuing on using animals. I'm not saying everybody is, but it happens. Hi, sweetie. I'm trying to, on Faint Signals from Vega, to address these different misinformation and disinformation. I hope that I'm doing some sort of a reasonable effort to do that, because time's running out, and because I don't think we're ever going to progress as a species while we keep exploiting this huge group of animals, and we keep breeding them by the hundreds of billions into existence, into this torturous existence, to be killed for their flesh and secretions, because that's basically what it is. We can't keep doing animal agriculture because it's truly a major contributor to the climate crisis. And it's totally messed up that we are doing what we are doing to sentient animals. The same animals, the same sort of sentience that is displayed in a cat or a dog whom we love, the same sentience. And sentience doesn't, it's about self-awareness. It's not whether those animals are like us or not, like us in quotes. They don't have to be like us for us to include them in our concern, our moral concern. They don't have to be like us. It's a little depressing when I'm on live streams and I see that sort of thing. It's not always like that, because sometimes you get a few vegans jumping in to say good things. But it is shifting. The dialogue is shifting. The discourse is shifting. And people are seeing the value in it, and they're seeing that they don't have to be involved in violence and injustice to live. They don't have to be destroying the lives of sentient animals to live a fully healthy and happy life. They don't have to deny themselves good, tasty food either. People are seeing that. Even businesses are seeing that there's a growing number of vegans on the planet, and they're starting to respond to that. In fact, Forbes magazine suggested to businesses that they should embrace veganism. It's not a fringe thing anymore. If it's not a fringe thing, and we can live happy, healthy lives, we can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. So what are we doing then? What are we doing? Because it's up to each individual, each of us, to stop looking for excuses, to stop looking to other people to back us up for continuing on with this awful violence and injustice towards a vulnerable group, all because they don't look like us or they don't behave in the same ways as us, and because they're vulnerable, they can't fight back. That should be more of a reason to protect them, meaning to not exploit them, because they're so vulnerable. That should be more of a reason for us to go vegan, the fact that they cannot fight back against our use, our exploitation of them. Do you know what I mean? It's like children. Children can't fight back against exploitation. They can't fight back against bullying. They can't fight back. And you know what it's like if you see somebody abusing a puppy or abusing a cat. Hopefully, you want to step in and stop that, because they can't really fight back. They're vulnerable. But what is the difference when there are little young piglets who are the same as those dogs or cats? Little young piglets who are in these large confined areas, and I'm talking about not just the industrialized factory farming in quotes, but on smaller farms where they're still tortured and they're still eventually killed. What's the difference between the way they're treated and the way they're used, more importantly, than when we see somebody attacking a puppy or torturing a cat? We would say, we actually think that when people torture cats and dogs, that that can lead to becoming even a serial killer, and that's documented. And yet, we have systemic abuse of non-human animals for trivial reasons. Systemic. 1 to 3 trillion aquatic and land animals every single year are tortured and killed. It's systemic. And it's all away from our view in the countryside, the slaughterhouses and the big industrialized farms and the big industrialized free range in quote. All of the awful things that happen on all these different farms, including mom and pop farms, it's all hidden from view, and that includes dairy and eggs. It's all sanitized so we don't have to think about it, and we just see the little bloodless packages on the shelf. We see the nice cartons of milk with the happy cows running around on the front. Happy cows. Do we really think cows are happy having their children taken from them regularly and then being killed at 5 years old, because they're no use to the dairy industry. Do you think they're happy when their children are killed? Because male calves are killed pretty much straight away because they're no use to the dairy industry. There's a whole lot of suffering and violence in all these forms of animal exploitation. And yet we fuss and carry on about animals we fetishize, like dogs, cats, whales, dolphins, tigers, lions. We fetishize them, give them it like as if they're a different group, even though they're still viewed as property, entertainment, whatever. We separate them from all these other animals that have the same sentience and who love life just like those animals we fetishize. It's all in our heads. This fetishization. Because anybody who's been to a sanctuary can see cows, pigs, chickens, goats, all those animals, they have sentience, they're the interactions with the people on those sanctuaries and with one another, it's all very obvious. We've just decided certain groups of animals we're going to use for food, that's meat, dairy, eggs. Certain animals we're going to use for entertainment, zoos, circuses, SeaWorld and all of that. There's certain animals we're going to use for clothing. They end up being killed too, their children taken from them, tortured, etc. Certain animals we're going to use for experiments, all kinds of species, even though alternatives exist, and it would be if animals were not viewed as property. Scientists would be quickly developing alternatives. It's just they don't have to. They can just use rats by the millions every year. They're not even counted. Mice by the millions every year. They're not even counted. Cats, dogs, monkeys, all kinds of animals. And it's not really necessary at all. And they don't try to find alternatives because why should they? And there are alternatives already, and still a whole lot of scientists do not use them because animals are viewed as property by law. Sentient animals. Slavery, human slavery, that still exists today. But in law, people are not viewed as property, even if human slavery exists today. All these different excuses I mentioned in the beginning, the whole idea of that you can use animals humanely and that makes it justifiable. There's no such thing as humane animal use, and even if there were, it would still be wrong. In other words, there's no such thing as non-abusive use of animals. As far as it being elitist, what is elitist is us continuing to use animal products when it's creating mass death, when it's creating zoonotic diseases, when it's creating superbugs that will make antibiotics irrelevant, when it's destroying the planet because of its, well, I'll just show you those two memes, when it's contributing greatly to world hunger, when it's destroying the oceans and creating dead zones and killing all kinds of species, as well as the target species in the ocean. Look at Seaspiracy and Cowspiracy, the sustainability secret. Is it a personal choice? Well, one could say is killing people because they may not have the same abilities as us, or they're different to us. Is that a personal choice? Is it a personal choice when we kill literally trillions every year? Mass violence? It ceases to be a personal choice when it involves the killing and torture of other sentient beings, particularly in the trillions. It ceases to be a personal choice. It ceases to be a personal choice when we're destroying the planet and causing mass climate refugees by the millions. It ceases to be a personal choice when we create pandemics through zoonotic diseases, animal to human, due to our consumption of animals. And it ceases to be a personal choice when we are creating superbugs which end up killing a lot of people because there are no antibiotics to deal with those new superbugs that keep mutating all the time because of the great confinement of animals causing great stress, fed prophylactic antibiotics while they're stressed out to prevent illnesses that haven't even occurred, prophylactic antibiotics that help them grow quicker to the point where chickens die of heart attacks because they get so big and their legs break, and it creates these superbugs. It ceases to be a personal choice to put these sentient animals through all of that and then take their lives, a life that is precious to them, just like our life is precious. They don't willingly go up to slaughterhouse workers to be killed, despite those ridiculous suicide chicken ads where chickens are happy to be killed and in these ads and they're dancing around, proud to be somebody's dinner. Sentient animals are fearful for their lives. They are frightened at slaughterhouses, terrified. They know what's coming. They're terrified. And because you and I, if we are not vegan, we are responsible for every single one of those terrified sentient animals at those slaughterhouses, the thousands every second globally. We are responsible for their terror and for their killing if we're not vegan. And all the 1 acre to 2 acres every minute now of the Amazon rainforest is being cleared for animal agriculture and for soy to feed animals in animal agriculture. 1 minute, 2 acres now in Brazil, because Bolsonaro has increased the ability for corporations to go in and do that. That's us. If we're not vegan, we are responsible for the killing of animals in those rainforests because their habitat is being cleared. We're responsible for destroying the lungs of the planet if we're not vegan. Is that a personal choice? I have decided that my taste buds are more important than all of that I just mentioned so far. And that's not an exhaustive list. It's not an exhaustive list. There is so much. There's a list as long as my arm of all the unfortunate things that happen through this claim of personal choice. Killing people because we're racists. Is that a personal choice? Or is it a systemic discrimination which causes great violence to vulnerable groups who are sentient? Vulnerable groups. Do we really want to continue on this might makes right? Do we want to continue on with human supremacist behavior? Now, there'll be some people who will be okay with what we do to animals because they don't think animals matter, basically. And to those people, you cannot convince them, and I don't try. But most people, just like you, care. They care about animals. We just have to expand our care, expand our concern, because this whole compartmentalization, moral compartmentalization we do, where we cry our eyes out when our family member, cat or dog, dies, we're devastated, and yet we sit down to a plate of bacon and eggs and milk, coffee, and all of that represents dreadful violence. Could we do the same things that we're doing to those animals that are on our plates, or the products that they've unwillingly given? Could we do the same things that we've done to those animals, to that beloved dog or cat whom we live with and whom we've grieved so much when they die? Do we truly believe that those dogs or cats have something special, another level of sentience? If it's not even possible, sentience is sentience. There are no levels. But do we truly believe that they somehow, they're a special kind of animal, that, and other animals, the ones we eat, wear, and use, they don't have the same sentience, they don't have the same love of life, they don't have the same wonderful qualities? Or even if they don't have the qualities that we consider wonderful, the fact that they love life and do not want to die, and I'm talking about aquatic animals, even though we don't recognize the emotions or lack thereof displayed on their face, does that mean they deserve to die? So we have to stop this moral compartmentalization and the excuses, the whole personal choice, personal choice. People only make those excuses, personal choice, particularly when you present them with the environmental climate crisis, largest study to date. They only present those personal choice arguments because they're trying to convince others that that's what it is. They're trying to convince others that it's a personal choice. But it's easily dismissed, except some people are committed to it. They're committed to holding that position because they don't want to change their behavior. There's a whole lot of behavior changing that needs to happen on the planet right now, and a whole other way of thinking, not only just about non-human animals, but about the systems that are killing the planet, capitalism, which is also a demand and supply thing. Just like if we stop making demands for animal products, and we make demands for plant-based products, then corporations respond. If we make demands for greener ways of living or less consumption, then the market will respond, or the markets will fade out and something else will happen. This whole thing about everything has to be about the economy, that way of thinking has to end. This death drive capitalism, the death machine of capitalism, has to end. Just like anything, it's up to us to address it in ourselves and see what is working and what isn't. And it has to become not just about ourselves, because that whole self-driven, I want, therefore I must have, despite anything, that has to end, because look where we are now. We are literally on the edge of extinction. And do we want? Is that what we want? Are we going to do I want, I consume, I'm going to keep consuming, and it doesn't matter how much devastation, how much violence it causes, I'm going to keep consuming until the bitter end? We're going to have to change the way we view a lot of things. And we're going to have to recognize the interconnectedness of all. If anything shows us interconnectedness right now, it's this COVID-19 pandemic. That's how it is. We can pretend all we like that we're invincible and that only I matter. But it's not working out like that. Look at the climate crisis. And basically animal agriculture, because of our violence and this unnecessary thing that we're doing, that is also contributing to the catastrophe that's coming. So eventually, animal agriculture, kind of our exploitation of animals, is coming back to kill us. Literally. It really is. So we're going to have to change in ourselves, in our way of thinking. And truly, I've said this before and I truly mean it, once you become vegan, it is so much more profound than you could ever think it could be. It's only until you've been vegan for a while that you realize how profound it is and how it changes the way we view things, and it makes us feel more connected to everything. That's how I feel anyway. It's a tremendous gift to oneself and to others to become vegan. It really is. I often feel sad when I hear about people dying and they never got to become vegan. It makes me very sad. So friends, please stick with this channel, because I'm trying to connect the dots about how veganism is connected to all these other discriminations, that speciesism is connected to all these other discriminations. They're all faces of the same ignorance. They all cause violence. And we have to end speciesism, because where you have one form of discrimination, you will have all forms. So I try to not put it over there like it's something separate, something that we can do kind of, get around to it eventually when everything else is fixed. I don't want us to see it as something over there that you eventually will do when everything else is better, if that's even possible. It's not something separate to everything. It's at one of the sources, or a main source, of all these other discriminations in a way, because it's probably the worst violence there is on the planet right now by far. And we can't be doing that to such a great group, or such a large group, and it not affect everything else. It's impossible. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please go vegan. Check out my vegan resource in podcast form, howtogovegan.org. And I think you'll find it helpful. It's an ethical position. It's not a health kick. It's not, and the ancillary benefits, they're important, but veganism is about non-human animals and rejecting the use of them. So let's go vegan. Thanks for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Fancy Muslim Vegan. Till next time. Bye for now.